Welcome everyone to another exciting webinar organized by EU DisinfoLab as part of our weekly series. We'll take just a minute to let more people join us. Okay, I see the numbers growing. Welcome again. My name is Ana Romero, and I am a counter-disinformation researcher at EU DisinfoLab. I'll be moderating today's session, Faster and More Trustworthy, Why Ex-Community Nodes Need Fact-Checkers to be Reliable. We are thrilled to see such a great turnout today. Our webinars have been incredibly successful, and we are very proud of that. It's all thanks to you, our amazing community, and to the fantastic work being done by so many defenders. Today, a special thanks to you, Maldita, for joining us, and thanks to the audience for being here. We truly appreciate your engagement and your time. Before we begin, just a quick important reminder. We are already working on EU DisinfoLab annual conference program happening this year in Ljubljana in October. And registrations will open soon, so don't miss your chance to secure your spot. Now, before diving into today's session, just a few quick housekeeping rules. Please pay attention. We will be using Slido as our interactive platform. You can join by scanning the QR code that you see displayed on your screen, or by going to slido.com and entering the password #disinfo. It's here in Slido where you have to submit any questions to our guest speaker. The Zoom chat will not be used for Q&A. And I would encourage you to already connect to Slido, as just in a minute, I'll be asking you a couple of questions. And also feel free to start submitting your questions to our speaker at any time, so you don't have to wait until the end of her presentation. Also, a reminder, this webinar is being recorded. If you'd like to rewatch it or to share it later, it will be soon available on our YouTube channel and on our website. In addition, we are excited to offer a new tool for live translations. You can enable subtitles in your preferred language by clicking the CC button at the bottom right of your screen, selecting Enable Translation, and choosing your language. Please note that AI is used in this process, so the subtitles may not be very accurate. We are almost ready to start, but before we do, we would like to know a bit about you. So go to Slido and please take a moment to let us know where are you coming from today. Brussels, Madrid, Vilnius, Germany, Portugal. All right, thank you very much. Now, could you let us know which sector do you represent? Non-government organizations mostly, a bit of academia. All right, so why are we here today? So content moderation on social media has become an increasingly complex issue, especially after Meta announced it would no longer rely on third-party fact-checking across Facebook and Instagram. Instead, the company has opted to implement community nodes, a crowdsourced approach originally developed by X to provide additional context to posts. And Google is also following this trend. However, the effectiveness to community nodes remains a subject of debate. While the system aims to provide a decentralized, user-driven solution to miss disinformation, concerns persist regarding its reliability, scalability, and potential for manipulation. A recent study by Maldita shed lights on these issues, providing key insights into how fact-checkers impact the effectiveness of community-driven moderation and the urgent need to refine and improve the way they function across platforms. The shift toward community-based moderation raises important questions, and to help us make sense of it all, I'm honored to introduce our guest speaker, Marina Sacristán Hidalgo, Public Policy and Institutional Development Officer at Fundación Maldita. Marina, thank you for joining us. With a background in international relations, she focuses on EU's digital policies by conducting analytical research and exchanging insights and best practices with stakeholders ranging from big tech companies to public authorities and civil society. Without further ado, Marina, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I will start sharing my screen, but also thanking EU DisinfoLab for the invitation, because I attend many of these webinars, and my colleagues at Maldita do too. Even if this happens at Spanish lunchtime, we usually join. So we're very excited to share our research here. So without further ado, again, thank you for the introduction as well. And this is the topic that we'll be discussing today. So first, I wanted to do a brief introduction to where I work, which is Fundación Maldita.es, because this also gives insights of how a fact-checking organization works and what can bring to the table into a tool such as community notes. So Fundación Maldita is a nonprofit foundation based in Spain that builds public trust by fighting disinformation and promoting transparency. So our approach to building trust consists of protecting citizens and protecting the society against the spread of disinformation through education, policy action, and strengthening the ecosystem overall. We try to connect a diverse community of stakeholders from across society so they become active collaborators in the fight against disinformation. We aim to respond with trustworthy evidence-based content that helps debunk disinformation and addresses the needs of the citizens. And finally, we want to detect disinformation faster and more efficiently so we can investigate further how disinformation spreads, what are the trends, and how it erodes public trust. So how do we do this? Basically, through many different ways. This is also one of the keys of this presentation. We do so through journalism, which does include fact-checking as well, but it's a broader concept, through education, media literacy for all groups of society, from older people to younger people to other journalists to educators. We build technological solutions that help us with this detection and response side of our work. We conduct research that allows us to give better insights to stakeholders. And this is the main side of my job, policy action. We conduct advocacy activities to give all this evidence that we gather through all the different sides of our work to all the actors implied. So other digital platforms, authorities and regulators, other journalists, anyone who might be benefited by the work that we present. It is very important to mention our community also in this presentation, because the numbers are there in the presentation. Those are the ones that allow us to build better evidence. We have a chatbot that it's very much used to flag content to us that citizens want to verify. We have experts that give us their superpowers, that we say, so the knowledge that they have, They give it to us in case we needed to make a verification. And we have people that rely on us to look for better information. It is also relevant that we try to cooperate with other countries. We participate in many projects to do this at a global scale. So the why we are doing this, we did this research is, it was very well presented by Anna, because are some of the news that we've been having. So the CEO's new push is based on betting for community nodes as a way to end up with the disinformation problem. Elon Musk is probably the louder voice in general to fight for this as the ultimate solution. But we also have Google presenting and introducing a sort of community nodes for YouTube, while also saying that they are not willing to collaborate with fact checkers. And finally, we have Mark Zuckerberg saying not only that they want to implement a system such as community nodes in Instagram, Facebook, and Threads, but that's the replacement for the fact checkers program that they used to have. So it's not only that they are pushing for a final solution against disinformation, which we all as a community know, as a community know that is not real, because the fight against disinformation is a combination of all efforts, but at the same time, they are presenting community nodes as a replacement, as a way of stopping collaboration with fact checkers. So it's basically a unilateral war. The fact checkers don't want to fight, but this is the context that led to the research. Also, we had been looking at community nodes before even its implementation in Europe. So we had been seeing some of the shortcomings. For example, we did some case studies during the EU elections. So we will check the response of community nodes to disinformation on the EU elections, and also during the floods here in Valencia. We also gathered posts, so tweets that contain disinformation that Maldita had debunked, and checked whether it had a community node available or not. So we had some ideas of the shortcomings of these systems, but we wanted to look into their data to verify this. So, but before we jump into the findings of our research, I wanted to briefly explain how community nodes work, because we all have in mind the idea of a post with a text down it that contains a brief context that adds up to the tweet. But basically, the tool was created actually in 2021. So the development and implementation of it started there, and it was called Birdwatch, which is the name that I like better. And so this was before Elon Musk bought the platform. So it's not his idea, but this happened also before he decided to fire much of the content moderation system and really push for this as the moderator of the content happening in X. It is a solution. It is an initiative based on crowdsourcing, which involves gathering the work, the information, the opinion from a large group that submit their data, basically. This is not super revolutionary. We are seeing this all the time in other apps. For example, there are traffic apps where you can, if you pass by an accident, you can flag it in the app and for others to see. So that will be crowdsourcing as well. Another example that I think it's the most famous is Wikipedia, which also is grounded on crowdsourcing for its content. And interestingly, it's been also targeted by Elon Musk. But again, community nodes, it's for adding context to any post in the app. I think it's relevant that we don't see it as a debunking, only debunking tool because adding context, I think it's a wider sense of what this tool is aimed for. So basically, if you wanted to write a note, you will have to join the program and become a contributor by 3 simple requirements: having recent violations of access policies, having an account that is 6 months old, and a verified phone number. After that, you will be part of the program, and you will be able to rate notes. And after you rate a couple notes, so you vote whether they're useful or not, you will be able to write any note on any post. So the process more or less implies that one of the members of the community notes program writes a note which has to be no more than 280 characters, including inside those characters a mandatory link to a trustworthy source that helps verify the information that you are providing. Then, after you submit or you propose that note, it will start being rated by other users on whether they find it useful or helpful or not. Also, at the time that you propose the note, you have to click on the reason why you think the note is needed. And at the time of rating, you need to do exactly the same. So click on why you think the note is useful. So these rates then go through an algorithm, a bridged algorithm that, instead of just counting on the majority of votes to make a decision, favors that people that have in the past disagreed have agreed on this note. So that is their way of looking into consensus. If people that have voted differently in other notes are agreeing on this note, that for community notes equals that it is useful, in fact. So that way, this algorithm determines whether it's going to become visible, and that's what we see in our interface, that we see next to the tweet. That means that the algorithm has determined that there's some kind of consensus among people from different views, different political spectrums. But what happens is that users are rating the notes constantly, what means that the status is dynamic, it can change. And it starts with a needs more rating status, which is not visible for all members of X. And then it can, or it can never, sometimes it never does, but it can reach the helpful status, which means that it becomes visible. So after knowing this, our research was based on looking into how community notes works and how are fact checkers represented into the text of the notes and their impact in the platform, and if they are really opposed forces as they were being presented. For this, we used the public available data on community notes that anyone can access. You just download some TSV files, and what we did was filter that to only take into account notes created in 2024 that we thought it was relevant because it had been already implemented in most countries, all EU countries. So that was our case study, which resulted in over 1 million notes that were proposed during that time. Then we looked into these variables. So the text of the note, the tweet that it was linked to, when it was created, the note, whether or not it left the needs more ratings status, and when did it do, and the status it had when we downloaded the data, which was 2 months ago, so January 13th. And for this, we wanted to first look into those links, those mandatory links that the text of the note needs, so the sources being used, and the performance of these nodes, while at the same time having the role of fact checkers in mind. So this is what we came across. So what do users rely on when writing their notes and to provide context for other users? So after cleaning the data and grouping similar domains, we saw that users in community nodes rely on X itself. So they will include in the node another tweet, a reference to policies from X, and that is the #1 source, the #1 domain in any proposed node. And it was followed by Wikipedia, which is interesting too, because it's another crowdsourced platform. And in third place, after grouping all fact-checking organizations belonging to verified fact-checking organizations belonging to the International Fact-Checking Network and the European Fact-Checking Standards Network, it came in third place as the most repeated domain. So 1 in 27 nodes will have a link to a fact-checking organization. Then we see that it's followed by YouTube, and in fifth place, it comes the BBC. Also, if we didn't have grouped the fact-checking organizations and looked at single domains, we see that in the top 50, you will have fact-checking organizations such as Snopes or PolitiFact in the US, and also media outlets such as Reuters, AP, or Washington Post, which also have a verified side of the organization that does fact-checking. But because we understand the role of fact-checkers, that fact-checkers play also as providing context that is relevant to their local and their national context, we decided to divide the notes by language. We automatically detected the language of the text, and we repeated the same process, but language by language. And we took as an example Spanish, German, French, and Italian, and Polish as most spoken languages in the EU. I must say that English is by far the most used language for community notes. I think it's over 650K notes, but in second place comes Spanish. So I think it is relevant to see fact-checking organization Maldita in 12th place and Neutral in 15th. So we have 2 fact-checking organizations. We have Corrective for German. We have media outlets again that do fact-checking, such as 20 Minuten, but we also have Factuel AFP. In Italian, we have Facta News and Open, which are both verified. And we have Demagogue for Polish. So we're seeing that for adding context that has a national aspect, people are relying on fact-checking organizations. I think it is also interesting that another targeted entity is Legacy Media, targeted by Elon Musk, but we're seeing how people are relying as well on newspaper that cover their national information space. So after this, we realized, data showed us that users are relying on fact-checking organizations as a source to provide further information to other users. So we wanted to compare how nodes containing fact-checking information were performing compared to the rest. For this, we took 3 data sets. One is nodes overall, so all the nodes being proposed during 2024. Those containing a link to an international fact checker, and those containing a link to a European fact checker. For this, we used the IFCN for international and the EFCSN for European, which are entities that not only gather organizations, but verify that they are complying with high standards of fact-checking practices. So to check the performance, to compare the performance, we looked into two different aspects, which were visibility and the speed. And these are our findings on visibility. A node will never be useful if it's left in the interface for only contributors. It needs to be shown to the public, to the wide public next to the tweet. And we see that the numbers were very low overall and for everyone. So only 8% of the nodes were visible at the time that we downloaded the data for 2024. So this is, I think that represents one of the main challenges of this tool, because of these 92% of nodes that are left unshown, there are many that will be trolling accounts or something that is actually not useful, but there's a big portion of it, and there's other research on this, that it is useful and contains facts and contains actually helpful information. But because the system relies on the algorithm that favors consensus over quality sources, they will never be shown to the public, so they're not actually useful. But if we compare this data to that of international fact checkers and European fact checkers, we see that those containing links to fact checkers are more visible than the overall. So they will perform better. And the other factor that it was relevant for us, because this information spreads fast and the community note or any label will be useful to hinder virality only if it's shown fast. So we looked into the data on time. So we had the time the tweet was posted, the time the note was proposed, and the time the note became visible. That's why we only took the notes, that 8%. We took that 8%, the 12%, and the 15%. So let's say we have the group of helpful notes, and we looked into how long the process of a tweet being flagged by a note and it becoming visible, how long it took. And we see that, by the way, for this, we didn't take the average time, but the median time of the notes, because we were seeing how they were notes that were flagging posts from 11 years ago. So the numbers of the average were not representative of the time the process actually takes. So we took the median time, and these were the results. From a post to be flagged by a note, it took like 4 hours and 48 minutes. Then for it to become visible over 6 hours. And if we see the process as a whole, it will take 14 hours. And we see that this is less for international fact checkers, so 23 minutes less than usual, and 24 less for the node to become visible. But if we look at the time of the process overall, we see that nodes containing a link to an international fact-checking organization, it will become visible 90 minutes earlier than general nodes. So our findings are basically that we knew that fact-checking and community are two things that are indivisible, but we saw how this was reflected on the data of community nodes, because our communities rely on us to verify information. Communities are also using our information to provide it through community nodes to others. So we see that users find fact-checking content reliable for them to include it in their nodes. Despite the challenge that we see that there are many nodes that never become visible, it is more likely that a node containing a fact-checking content becomes visible. And on the other side, also regarding its performance, Debunks need to be fast, and notes with fact-checking content perform better in that regard. They are faster than overall notes with containing any kind of source. Also, I wanted to mention that I personally believe that this process is not as fast as it could. So the time between a tweet and a visible notice is not as fast as it could, because you are only relying on voluntary work. So that's always going to hinder the process. But these are basically the findings of our research. And we had from the beginning some ideas of the strengths and weaknesses of this system that we believe fact checkers could help to resolve. But again, the strengths of this system, and there are things that also fact checkers pursue, is to detect disinformation faster and to detect areas of disinformation that reside in places that we hadn't seen before. So that is something very interesting from community notes that we also have different processes to achieve. And you are actively involving the community to do so, which also empowers the fight against disinformation overall. But there are issues involving favoring consensus over facts and quality, which we think that is problematic because of what we are seeing of the data on visibility. There are topics that are too controversial and no consensus will ever be reached, even though the note contains facts. There's also our worry that notes on harmful misinformation, so that's very impactful, need to be quicker. There needs to be different ways for these notes to appear faster to the public. We are not sure that the algorithm can really prevent coordinated manipulation. And this is something that other research can also help verify, but that is always a risk when you rely solely and without moderation on the community. And another factor that we would like to see improved and that we can also cooperate doing is that accounts that are being recurrently flagged by community notes because of they're spreading disinformation don't have any kind of punishment of other moderation. Actually, when I said that we had done some research on the floods in Valencia, we saw that only 15% of the posts had a community note out of the posts that we flagged containing disinformation. But out of that group, 45% of them had a blue check. So they were monetizing their content and while they were spreading disinformation and being flagged by community notes. So the truth is that the collaborations between users in community notes and fact checkers is possible. There's not such a thing as a battle, but only collaboration and combination of efforts to fight disinformation. And I think that we need to get all the strengths that we have to work together, fact checkers and community notes as well. So thank you. I hope I didn't go too fast.
Thank you, Marina. It's been very insightful, your presentation, and getting to know all the weakness and the strengths of the community nodes. Let me see how many people is in the room. I think around 35, I believe, more or less. Yes. All right. So. Marina, I just wanted to add something. What you and Maldita have done with this study is, I believe, is framed in a very timely and important discussion, especially now that other platforms are adopting similar systems. With that said, I'm going to open now questions and thoughts from the audience. Please remember to
share. No.
remember to use Slido. You'll see it in a minute in your screen, the QR code that you can scan, or you can either go to slido.com and enter the hashtag disinfo, so you can submit your questions. We have approximately over 20 minutes for this session, so let's make the most of it. Marina, if I may, let me start with the first question. There are many studies showing that falsehoods spread more widely than debunking. In this sense, community notes might have an advantage because they go viral along with the false claims, matching its reach. Do you think this could be a beneficial way to make fact-checking go viral if it spreads within the community notes? Could any advantage be gained from this?
So yes, I think so. I think that anything that puts fact-checked information next to disinformation is useful. It is true that the perception is that it goes viral alone, but the truth is that it needs to become visible for it to be shown. So I think that it is an opportunity to make our work or any information scalable, but it's also behind, so it takes time for it to be shown. But yes, the intention of fact-checking organization is to be helpful with our verifications. So I think it is positive that it's being used because it means that it's being seen by others.
Thank you, Maria. Let's go with the first question. Have you noticed any patterns in how quickly community notes appear when a claim goes viral? What factors influence the speed of the publication?
So we have only checked the fact that they are using a fact-checking link for comparison of times, but it is true that while doing the research, we saw some very fast notes, becoming visible very fast on topics that are not that controversial. So we were seeing some notes on topics such as sports. It is controversial, of course, but it's not very harmful. And so that might be, I don't want to give a final answer, but that might be some of the factors that the topic that it covers is not as controversial. So that's why consensus is easily reached. And also that the text really looks into the note. So there are cases such as it is a manipulated image, which is very obvious and helps the note become visible.
This line, Noel Scum is asking if you have any assessment on why notes have so little visibility. Would it be because at the time they are displayed, the virality is gone, so no traffic anymore?
Mm-hmm. It is interesting because I don't think you can download that data, but you can see it in the note itself, the impressions that it has, and then compare it to the impressions of the post. And it's true that it's always going to be lower. So I think that for users to pay enough attention to a post for them to decide to propose a note, it has to be very viral. Nobody is going to write a note on a post that has no views. So people are proposing notes once the tweet is already viral. After that, after being proposed, grades have to be done and people have to vote. So the process is actually slower than we think, while the post keeps becoming more and more viral. So it's true that they might come by the time that the virality is already more steady.
Marina, after Meta's decision, some in the community have advocated for a mixed solution, so fact-checking and community notes. Are they compatible or can only one exist?
I think they are compatible. They rely on the same basic idea of labels, which is basically the preferred moderation action by fact checkers, because it's both respectful of freedom of speech and provides more information, and also empowers the user to make their own decisions based on the information that is available. So the Meta's fact-checking program was labeled by fact checkers. Now Community Notes is labeled by any user, but I think there are ways to use the work of fact-checking organizations and ingest it into the process of Community Notes. I think that our work is useful to identify quality sources and quality information, or add more context to the note, things that we have seen that will add up to the information that the community is proposing. And I also think fact checkers could play a role into flagging those notes that need to be visible as quick as possible.
So do you think that these platforms could balance free expression with factual integrity?
I think so. I think that, again, labels are a way of dealing with lawful but awful posts. So again, those posts that contain illegal content have to be removed by law in the European Union, but those containing disinformation can be flagged through labels that only offer that context that will make better informed decisions when sharing. And I think they also are helpful. Well, I think no, research finds that they are helpful to hinder that virality.
Thank you, Marina. There is this very interesting question that I think everyone wants to know the answer. How effective are community notes in actually preventing the spread of misinformation? Are they reducing engagement with false content? What's your opinion on this?
I must say that I don't know. X, of course, says it is, but I don't know. I think that there's further research to be done in this regard. But I would assume that yes, that people that see a note that puts into doubt the post will be less likely to share it.
Let's hope.
I would assume.
And further to that, do you think that community notes will be enough to counter large-scale disinformation efforts, or that will require additional safeguards?
I do think that community notes is a powerful tool, but only, again, in combination with other moderation systems. So as I had been mentioning, during the floods in Valencia, here in Spain, we saw an unprecedented disinformation crisis that was very harmful and spreading really fast. And we saw that community notes was not keeping up with that. Because again, you are relying on random users that voluntarily spend their time doing this.
Yeah.
So you cannot expect that they put as many hours as, for example, fact checkers do to take this information to the general space. So for large scale disinformation efforts, I think it's complicated.
Have you detected any signs of coordination efforts to suppress fact-based notes?
We have seen, and I have seen in other research examples of people coordinating their ratings or coordinating proposed notes and then the rates to try to manipulate the system. Again, I cannot say how successful they are, but the algorithm is also public, the algorithm that Community Notes uses. So I don't think it's impossible to translate that coordination into the outcome that you want. I'm sure they have thought about this and there are some kind of steps they take, but I don't think that coordination is impossible in the system.
Mm-hmm. Under Maldita's point of view, do you think there should be priority mechanisms for certain types of misinformation, for example, election-related falsehoods versus everyday misleading claims?
I think so. I think it is important, again, to remind that this is a tool to add context in general. So we are seeing many notes that offer information that is not as critical. We're seeing notes that are being proposed into jokes or into any kind of post just to bother a user or something. So this tool is being used for other things aside from debunking. That's why I think that this harmful disinformation, for example, during health crisis, during an election, those are very critical that become visible. And to reach those among all the other notes that they're not as needed or as relevant because of their impact, I think will be a first step to make this system better.
Thank you. I'm trying to gather any follow-up on Musk's promise to have science propagate across content judged to be similar to content with science. Example, the same fake image posted in different accounts.
I think this is a useful implementation by community nodes. So what Sohan means is that if there's an image inside a tweet that has been flagged by community nodes and has a visible note, others that share that same image flagged with the same note. So that's a way to scale the node. And I think it's useful. We have not done as research as deep into this, but what I've seen is that for images is doing okay. For videos, not that much. But I think that the idea to scale nodes on similar disinformation or similar content is a step in the right way.
And the same person is asking if there is any hope that community nodes can be shareable. Trouble is that a post gets science and I can share the community node in response to or as a community node for another post with the same or similar content.
I can share this in response to or okay. I think I know what you mean. And I don't think it is possible right now. So basically, I imagine what he's proposing, such as for example, the Grok conversations that you can share under any post with a link. This is not the case for community nodes, but there is a way to see the proposed nodes on a tweet, which is not very obvious if you are not part of the program. But basically, I'm going to look it up while we're speaking. Basically, if you write, I don't have my Twitter account open, but if you, no, I need to, well, basically there's a specific domain for community nodes. So if you use the ID of the post into that domain, you will be able to see all the nodes that are proposed, but not visible for the wider audience. So I think that is also a relevant tool to look up community nodes, because there's also the fact that the status of community nodes is dynamic. So there have been people saying that this tweet had a node and it disappeared. Maybe it didn't disappear, it is not helpful anymore. So under that domain, you can see all the nodes that are proposed. but I'll see if I can search how it goes while we keep responding questions. But it is true that you cannot share a community note for another tweet.
And can you share the tool you use for language detection?
Yes. So it is a Python library that I added. It is added into the larger report and in the methodology. It is named lang detect. So it's a Python library called lang detect.
Okay, thank you for sharing this. So we have this question that you already covered during your presentation, but maybe you want to add something else. What recommendations would you make to improve the collaboration between community nodes and fact-checking organizations so to enhance accuracy and trust?
Yeah, I don't mind repeating this because it was one of the points of this research, but combining the strength of community nodes not community nodes, but the members of community nodes in detecting disinformation and as a way to actively involve different people. I think it's very useful if we combine it with fact checkers methodology, because we have to remind that users, when they write a note, they're not following standards as we do when we verify information. So I think that the quality that we provide as fact checkers could be intersected with the tool, and also to give priority to certain nodes in comparison to others.
Thank you. This question, there's are fact checkers and community nodes competing or complementing each other? And an important one is how they can work together more effectively, which is linked to what you just said. Maybe you wish to add.
Yeah, so the context that led to this research is that there was a competition. So CEOs of big platforms seemed to want that competition, but it is not. We are happy with any effort that contributes to providing information and to stop disinformation. So it's not a competition. We're seeing how the content that we produce is being used inside community nodes. So they are basically complementing each other organically with our explicit intention, but just users that know the work and know the reliability of fact checkers decide to put that into community nodes for the others to see. So we are already working together by chance because of the communities. So there's ways to further improve this collaboration instead of building a competition that doesn't exist.
Exactly. One person is asking if you can share your presentation, your insights, and another one is saying in which language there is a larger amount of community nodes. So I think that the best way it's for you to let people know where your study is being placed so they can go and read it.
So maybe I can use the chat to put the link.
Yes, I'm actually doing that in the meantime.
Okay, so but the language side is interesting because again, English is by far the most used language, which historically makes sense because it started in the US, then in the UK and Australia. So it prioritized English-speaking countries before, but it is weird, not weird, but it's interesting for 2024 because more countries had that system in place already. But yes, Spanish is the second language with 100K proposed nodes. Then Japanese, there are many nodes in Japanese with 91K. Then French, Portuguese, also German, Polish, Italian, Hebrew, but yeah, in comparison to English, they win by far. So yeah.
All right. So I just posted in Slido where to find the study. I think that we can move to another question. The measure announced by Meta and in collaboration with fact-checking is currently in effect in the US. When do you think it will reach Europe? I'm not sure if it's been said. Do you have any?
It has not been said. Again, this is a measure happening in the US right now. We have laws that other countries don't have in Europe that might make them think twice about this decision. So the Digital Services Act mandates that platforms have mitigation measures in place against another thing, disinformation. Mm-hmm. And they mention fact-checking as a way to prevent disinformation from being spread. But it does seem from the communications of Meta that they will expand this decision, but we have no idea when. And
final question, and you're an expert on this, how Meta abandoning fact-checking affect their compliance or non-compliance with their obligations under the DSA or the Code of Practice?
Mm-hmm. So again, the Digital Services Act mandates that platforms need to have measures in place. They don't explicitly say that they need to have collaborations with fact checkers, which is one of the valid measures, like it's being researched that it works. So that doesn't imply that they automatically go against the law, but they need to demonstrate that they have other measures in place that are doing that job. We don't know yet, because there hasn't been any enforcement of this kind, that community notes is a valid measure. There hasn't been a decision from the Commission that hints this, but that on the side of the DSA, and now the Code of Practice, which is now the Code of Conduct, which means that the compromises, the commitments of platforms under the code can be audited under the DSA. That means they have the same weight as other obligations. That's why we've seen a step back on collaborations with fact checkers. Now that they can be audited, they decided that they're not needed in their platforms, but it is going to be used as a standard, the code itself, which does have a whole chapter on collaboration with fact checkers. So it is a benchmark to measure the compliance with these mitigation measures that big platforms need to comply with.
Thank you, Marina. I believe this was the last question. We are running out of time. So as I said before, I think this is a very timely and important discussion that should be closely followed up. Before leaving the room, I'd like to share two important announcements. On the 27th of March, we will be hosting a webinar, Clickbait Cures, about how Meta and Google are failing to stop fake Mets ads, with Alexandra Atanasova from Reset Tech, so don't miss it. And again, stay tuned, because registration to EU DisinfoLab annual conference next October in Ljubljana will be open soon. So our webinar today, it's coming to an end, and you will be prompted to complete a brief survey where you can provide feedback and also suggest future topics. We are all ears. Thank you again to our great speaker, Marina. Muchas gracias from Fundación Maldita, and to everyone who joined us today. I wish you a wonderful rest of the day and looking forward to see you soon again. Bye.
Thank you all.